My name is Keanu. I'm 34, and I drive a taxi in Cleveland. 2 months ago, my dad looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your kids aren't getting gifts this year. We're saving for your sister's honeymoon." My kids were 5 and 7. I said, "Okay." And I meant it in the calm way you say okay when you're done begging for basic decency. We left by 8 p.m. Hours later, when an envelope I'd been quietly carrying for weeks finally mattered, everything changed. Christmas Eve at my parents' house always smelled like pine and burnt sugar. Mom tried. She always did. She'd hang the stockings, put on the same playlist, cut the same star-shaped cookies like the shape alone could make the day safer. But safety in that house wasn't a thing you got. It was a thing you performed. My wife, Mara, hovered near the doorway with her coats folded over her arm. She didn't sit. She never sat in that living room anymore. Not since last spring when my sister Jade called her temporary, and my mom laughed like it was clever. My son, Eli, was running his finger along the little ceramic village on the mantel. My daughter, Noah, was quietly lining up candy canes by size. Small, medium, large. She liked order when the adults didn't have any. Dad clinked his glass like he was about to announce a promotion. "All right," he said, voice big and warm like he was about to hand out blessings. "Before we do anything else," I felt my shoulders tighten. I could tell Mara felt it too because her hand found my elbow. Just a quick touch. Dad's eyes went to my kids, then to me, then past me to the tree. "We need to talk about gifts," he said. Jade's head snapped up immediately, like she'd been waiting for this part. Mom's smile went thin. Dad kept going. "This year, we're doing something different." He leaned back like he'd already decided the argument was over. "Your kids aren't getting gifts this year," he announced. "We're saving for your sister's honeymoon." The room didn't move. The air didn't move. All I could hear was the cheap electric whir of the tree lights. Eli looked up. "What?" Noah blinked hard. Once. She didn't cry. She never cried in front of strangers. Dad's expression was the same one he wore when I was 14 and he found out I'd won a scholarship. Not proud, not happy. Just annoyed that I'd done something without asking permission. "It's not personal," Dad added. Like that fixed it. "Jade deserves a nice start. You understand?" Jade smiled into her wine. Mara's mouth opened, then closed again. Mom finally said, "We can do something small for the kids, maybe." Dad cut her off with a look. "That's the plan," he said. We agreed. Jade lifted her shoulders in a tiny shrug, like it was all out of her hands. And something inside me, something old, something trained, started to offer up the usual script. Be flexible. Don't make a scene. Smile for the kids. Let it go. I learned early that be flexible meant be invisible. I felt it rising anyway. That familiar heat behind my eyes. But then I looked at Eli. He was holding a tiny wooden snowman from the mantel, turning it over like it might have an answer. And I looked at Noah. She'd stopped lining up candy canes. Her hands were empty now. Still. I didn't want them learning the script. I didn't want them learning how to shrink and call it maturity. So I swallowed the heat. I nodded. I said, "Okay, not angry, not loud. Just final." Dad looked relieved, like he'd won. Jade smirked. "See? Keanu gets it." Mara's eyes flashed at me. A question. "Are we really doing this?" I squeezed her hand once. "Yes, we're doing this, but not the way they think. It wasn't one bad day. It never was. When you grow up in a family like mine, you don't have one big trauma you point to. You have a pattern. 1,000 tiny cuts, each one not a big deal until you realize you're bleeding out. Scene 1. I'm 8. It's my birthday. Mom made a cake. Chocolate with too much frosting because she thinks that covers things. Dad brings out a gift bag. Jade, 5 years old, already loud bounces on the couch yelling, "Mine? Mine?" Dad laughs and hands it to her. "It's not yours," Mom says too gently. Dad says, "It's fine. Let her open it." And Jade tears into it like a raccoon. It's a toy car. My toy car. She squeals like Christmas came early. Dad ruffles her hair. Then he looks at me and says, "You don't mind, do you? You're older. Be flexible." I remember the frosting sticking to the roof of my mouth like glue, like even swallowing was hard. Scene 2. I'm 16. I get my first job washing dishes at a diner. My hands reek of old grease and lemon sanitizer. I'm proud anyway because the money is mine. I come home late one night and find Dad sitting at the kitchen table with my paycheck in front of him. He holds it up like evidence. "What's this?" he asks. "My pay," I say, "for my job." He nods like I'm slow. "Good, you can contribute." "Contribute to what?" I ask. He slides a stack of bills toward me. "Jade needs new dance shoes. Your mother and I have a lot right now. You can help." I stare at the bills. My stomach drops. "That's my money," I say quietly. Dad's face hardens. "Don't be selfish. You live under my roof." Mom says nothing. Not because she agrees, because she's tired. Jade walks in, already wearing the old shoes, and says, "You're not going to make me quit, are you?" Like I'm the villain. I paid. Scene 3. I'm 23. I've moved out. Barely. A studio apartment that smells like someone else's cigarette smoke. I'm working nights driving for a cab company, trying to save for a better car, a better life. Dad calls. "Keanu," he says, voice sweet. That's how I know I'm about to lose something. "Jade got accepted to that destination wedding package," he says. "It's a great deal." "What wedding package?" I ask. He sighs like I'm the reason the world is difficult. "Jade and Trevor," he says. "They're doing it in Mexico. We're putting together the money." "Okay," I say slowly. "Why are you telling me?" Silence. Then, "Because family helps." I laugh once. It comes out sharp. "You want me to pay for Jade's wedding?" "Not pay," Dad corrects. "Contribute? How much?" He names a number that makes my throat go tight. I can't. I say. "I barely." Dad cuts in. "You drive people around all night. You're always talking about being tired. At least make it worth something." I go cold. That was the first time I realized he didn't just not respect me. He resented me for existing without needing him. Scene 4. Last summer. We're at a barbecue in my parents' backyard. Mara is pregnant with our second child at the time. She's glowing and exhausted. Jade walks up holding her phone like a weapon. "Mom says you're naming the baby Noah," she says, voice dripping judgment. Mara smiles politely. "Yeah, we like it." Jade snorts. "Of course you do. You always pick these trendy names." Mara's smile falters. Jade turns to me. "And you're letting her?" I feel the old instinct, the reflex to smooth things over, to laugh, to make it a joke. But Mara's eyes meet mine, tired and steady. So I say, "We're not asking permission." Jade's face twists. Wow, someone's got a backbone. Dad hears and walks over. "What's going on?" Jade says Keanu's acting like he's better than us. Dad looks at me and says, "Don't start." And I remember thinking, I didn't start anything, I just stopped bending. By the time Christmas Eve rolled around, I already knew what the family had decided, not the gift thing. That part was new. But the larger decision? They had decided Jade's life mattered more. They always did. The honeymoon was just the latest excuse. Because here's the part they didn't know. I wasn't just a taxi driver. I was a taxi driver who'd learned how to survive. And survival, for me, had started looking like quiet preparation. A year earlier, Jade had called me crying. Not fake crying. Real. Mascara Street. Voice shaking? "Keanu," she said, "I'm screwed." "What happened?" I asked. "Trevor lost his job," she whispered. "He says it's temporary, but we already booked so much." I should have said, "Not my problem." I didn't. I still had that stupid, dangerous hope that if I helped enough, they'd finally see me as more than a wallet with legs. "What do you need?" I asked. She sniffed. "Just help us bridge it. Just for a bit. Dad says he can't right now because of the mortgage." I knew that was a lie, but I didn't say it. "How much is Bridget?" I asked. She gave me another number. Not as big as the wedding, but big enough. "I can't just give you that," I said. "I'm not asking for a gift," she said quickly. "It's a loan. I'll pay you back. I swear." A pause. Then she added, softer, "You're always the one who can handle things. You always figure it out." It hit me like a compliment until I realized what it really meant. You're the one we can squeeze. I said yes anyway. But this time, I did it differently. I made it formal. I called a friend I drove sometimes, an attorney named Victor, who always tipped well and talked like he actually saw me. He helped me write up a simple loan agreement, payment schedule, default clause. Nothing dramatic. Jade signed it because she thought it was cute. "Oh my God," she laughed. "You're so serious." I didn't laugh. I kept the signed copy in an envelope in my glove compartment behind my registration. Just in case. Not revenge. Reality. Back in my parents' living room, Christmas Eve was unraveling in slow motion. Dad turned the conversation to family traditions, like he hadn't just told my kids they were optional. Jade started talking about beaches. Trevor wasn't there. He never came to my parents' place anymore. He didn't like feeling poor around Dad, which was ironic because Dad was only generous when it bought him control. Mara crouched beside Noah. "Hey," she whispered, "we're okay." Noah nodded but didn't look up. Eli's voice trembled. "Dad? Santa?" I crouched beside him. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "Santa knows where we are." Eli's eyes searched mine. "Even if Grandpa says—" "Even then," I said. I stood. I looked at Dad. "We're going to head out." Mom's face twitched. "Already?" "It's getting late," I said. Dad waved a hand. "Fine. Tell the kids not to be dramatic." Mara's shoulders went rigid. I kept my voice calm. "We'll see you later." Dad smirked. "Sure, if you don't hold a grudge." I didn't respond, because the thing about boundaries is you don't argue them. You enforce them. We had our coats on by 7:45. By 8 p.m., we were in the car. The heater was slow. Eli was sniffling quietly in the back seat, trying not to cry. Noah stared out the window like she was watching herself leave from far away. Mara buckled in and said, voice tight, "Tell me you have a plan." I turned the key. "I do," I said. She looked at me. "Keanu." I said, "Okay," I reminded her. I didn't say I agreed. Mara exhaled. It wasn't relief, exactly. It was trust. "Okay," she said softer. "Then let's go." We didn't go home. Not first. We went to my little storage unit on the east side, the one Mara used to tease me about. "What are you storing, Keanu? Gold bars?" I never answered. Because it wasn't gold. It was something I'd been building for my kids in small pieces over months. After the wedding loan, after Jade's Bridget, I started noticing how often my family treated my money like a communal resource. How Dad would brag about what we're doing for Jade while texting me later, "Send what you can." How Mom would call and say, "Your father's stressed," when what she meant was, "He's mad you said no." So I started saying no more often, quietly, and every time I said no, I put something aside. A toy here, a book there, a board game, a winter coat for Eli because he outgrew his and Dad's hand-me-downs were always stained. I bought gifts in October and November early, on sale, in cash. I hid them away, not because I was sneaky, because I was done letting people steal joy from my children. At the storage unit, I unlocked the roll-up door. Mara stared. Inside were 2 plastic bins, labeled in black marker Ellie 22,005, and a third bin labeled Mara. She covered her mouth. "Keanu," she whispered. I shrugged like it was nothing but my throat burned. "I didn't want to risk it," I said. "Not after last year." Last year, Dad had forgotten Eli's birthday and then posted a Facebook photo the next day captioned, "Family is everything." Mara wiped her cheek. "You did all this?" I nodded. Eli peeked around her. "Are those for us?" I crouched. "Yeah, but we're not opening them here." Noah spoke for the first time since leaving. "Santa found us?" The way she said it. Flat, cautious, like she didn't dare hope too hard. I swallowed. "Yeah, sweetheart. Santa found us." We loaded the bins into the trunk like we were stealing something precious. We were. We drove home through quiet streets lit up with other people's twinkling lights. Mara stared straight ahead and said, "We're not going back tomorrow morning." "No," I said. "We're not, and your dad is going to—" "I know," I said. "Let him." At 6:12 a.m. Christmas morning, Eli shook me awake. "Dad," he whispered, "urgent. Is it okay to go out?" Mara rolled over, eyes puffy. She'd barely slept. I sat up and looked at the clock. Then I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "It's okay. We set the bins under our small tree. Nothing fancy. Just a cheap artificial one we bought when money was tight. It had a little tilt to it no matter what you did." Mara plugged the lights in. The room filled with soft color. Noah pressed her hand to her chest like she was holding her heart in place. Eli bounced once, then froze, waiting for permission like he'd been trained to do. "Go ahead," I said. They tore into wrapping paper like it was oxygen. Eli got the big Lego set he'd pointed at in the store and then quickly said, "No, it's too much," because he'd learned to pre-reject his own wants. Noah got the art kit she'd been quietly circling online, the one with real markers, not the cheap ones that dried out. Mara opened her bin last, hands trembling. Inside was a small envelope with a key and a note. She read it. Then her eyes filled again. "A car?" she whispered. "It's not new," I said quickly, "but it's ours. Paid in full. No more borrowing your mom's. No more being stuck." Mara looked at me like she wanted to yell and kiss me at the same time. "You? How?" she asked. I shrugged again, but this time it felt steadier. "I drive," I said. "A lot, and I stopped paying for things that weren't ours." Eli looked up, paper stuck to his sock. "Dad," he said, "does Grandpa know Santa came?" I stared at the wreckage of wrapping paper and the bright, stunned faces of my kids. Then I said, "Grandpa doesn't get a vote." At 9:03 a.m., I posted one photo. Just one. Our living room, floor covered in gifts, wrapping paper everywhere. Eli holding up his Lego box like a trophy. Noah already drawing, tongue poking out in concentration. Mara in the background, smiling with her hand over her mouth like she still couldn't believe it. Caption, "Santa found us." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. Within 5 minutes, my phone started buzzing. Mom first. Call. I didn't answer. Dad next. Call. I didn't answer. Then Jade. Text. How? I stared at the screen. Mara looked over. "Don't," she said softly. I exhaled. "I'm not going to start a fight," I said. Mara's gaze was steady. "Then what are you going to do?" I thought about Eli's face last night. The way he'd looked at my dad like maybe he'd done something wrong by existing. I thought about Noah's silence, her tiny hands empty. I thought about Dad clinking his glass like he was announcing a charity fundraiser, instead of crushing children. I typed slowly. "I stopped paying for your honeymoon." I hit send. The moment after you hit send a text like that is always quiet, like the air itself is waiting. Then my phone exploded. "Jade, what do you mean?" "Jade, Dad said you agreed." "Jade, this is insane, Keanu." "Jade, you're ruining everything." Dad called again. I didn't answer. Mom texted, "Please call me. Your father is very upset." I stared at that line. Very upset. Not "I'm sorry," not "I didn't realize," not "we were wrong." Just he's upset, like his emotions were the emergency. Mara touched my shoulder. "You don't have to." "I know," I said, "but I did call Victor because boundaries aren't just feelings. They're paperwork." Victor answered on the second ring. "Keanu?" "Hey," I said. "You awake?" "I am now," he said dryly. "Everything okay?" I looked at my kids on the floor, happy and messy and real. "Yeah," I said, "but I need to enforce that loan agreement." A pause. Then Victor's voice went serious. "Did she default?" "She hasn't made a payment in 3 months," I said, "and now my dad's using my kids' Christmas to fund her honeymoon." Victor exhaled. "Send me a photo of the agreement. We'll draft a demand letter today." "Today?" I asked. "It's Christmas," Victor said. "People love playing family games on holidays. Let's ruin that tradition." I almost laughed. Almost. "Thank you," I said. Victor said, "Keanu, this isn't revenge. This is you refusing to finance disrespect." "I know," I said. I hung up. Then I did something I'd never done before. I blocked Dad's number. Not forever, necessarily, but for now. Because I wasn't going to let him scream at me while my kids built Legos. At 11:17 a.m., Mom showed up. No call, no warning. The knock sounded like a demand. Mara glanced at me. "Do you want me to?" I'll handle it. Mom stood on the porch in her red coat, hair perfect, eyes frantic. No hello. What did you do? Merry Christmas, Mom. Her jaw tightened. Keanu, Dad's car idled at the curb. He didn't get out. You embarrassed us, she said. That's your first concern? Jade is crying. Your father is upset, I finished. We had a plan. You had a plan. It's just a honeymoon. I let out one sharp laugh. No, it's my kids being told they don't matter. Dad announcing it like a joke. Everyone sitting there while my son asked why Santa won't come. Mom's voice dropped. You can't just pull money. Things are booked. That's why it was a loan, with terms. A loan? Her face shifted, because of course Dad told her it was handled. She signed an agreement, I said. She defaulted. I'm not paying another cent. Your father didn't know. He knew. He just assumed I'd keep bending. Mom's eyes filled. The old reflex twitched. Fix it. Then I heard Eli laugh behind me, bright and free, and it anchored me. This will tear the family apart, she whispered. It was already torn. I just stopped pretending. At least talk to your father. Not today. So that's it? This is the boundary, I said. You don't take from my kids to fund Jade. You don't shame them. You don't use me like a credit card and call it love. You can't keep the grandkids from us. I'm not keeping them, I said. I'm protecting them. Merry Christmas, Mom. Drive safe. I closed the door. At 2:40 p.m., Victor emailed the demand letter, dates, amounts, missed payments. I forwarded it to Jade's vendor email with one line. Per our agreement, this is formal notice. 3 minutes later, she called from a new number. What the hell is wrong with you? Hi, Jade. You can't do this. Everything's booked. I know. You're ruining my honeymoon. Did you hear what Dad said to my kids? It was a joke. You're dramatic. There it is, I said. You don't care what happened. You care the money stopped. They'll forget, she snapped. I looked at the Lego pieces on my floor. You don't get to rewrite what you did. This isn't punishment. It's reality. Dad promised. Then Dad can pay. He can't. We both knew the truth. He could. He just wouldn't. Because it was easier to take from me.